So this was going to initially be just a thing that I recorded for the company. We test models all the time, and we put them through things that models have failed at before. And when they do fail, we put that down and we figure out how they fail. So for the next time. But Opus 4.5 is the first model that really blew me away in how quickly it closed the design loop. It's the first model that actually closed the design loop. So instead of, like 2 hours of me trying things and noting down how things didn't work, this is a sped up 3 hours of me just having fun with the model and just building more and more and more and just trying to push into building front end components that I know models have failed at, right? And this is something that we've done for a long time. One of the first projects that we ever did at the company was a project called Elopix, that's open source and you can go look at it, which was around diagrams and reflecting on diagrams using visual models of the time and then improving them in a loop. So that visual multimodal loop of write code to generate something, to render it, to look at the rendering, to generate more code. Until now, models just haven't been able to do it. Like you'll give it to even Gemini 3, and it will give you some things that feel like Barnum statements that are, oh, the text isn't right or the color isn't good. They'll pick up some really big ones. But a lot of the specifics, like for example, the fact that these icons don't line up, they don't pick it up. You can ask leading questions to kind of get them there. I think that's what a lot of the really large front-end design prompts are doing, is force models to specifically look for a specific thing. But that doesn't always work. Here, first time any model that I've ever tried is it actually looked at it and said, oh no, the icons are off, or that's really not that readable, or the visual hierarchy here just doesn't make sense, right? So I'll leave my prompts up and you can sort of go back and see the prompts and how I'm talking to the model. I'm actually really not prompting it all that closely. I am in some cases when I have a specific vision I want in my head. So in this particular case, let's start at the beginning. We have, we start with something that looks a lot like this, which is what models can kind of give us. Today, this is the best that models can give us most of the time, which is your standard. This has become almost the bootstrap of the AI generated front end, which is you get this card layout with a lot of white space, a little bit of gray, maybe a light drop shadow. But this is still pretty good, honestly. Like this was already pretty hard when we were trying to build mobile responsive applications even 6 months ago with frontier models and the best of what we could do. This kind of a layout with the bottom bar was already pretty hard. So this is just me asking Opus 4.5 to try 3 completely different iterations of the same idea of how can we save space and put calories and macros on the same page, and then look at which ones work best and which ones we can pull ideas from. And so what's actually happened here is it's done that kind of visually iterative prompting loop, that design loop, it's closed on its own. I'm actually not even a part of it. I was expecting to come in and give it feedback, but when I came in and saw the notes that I had written down, I didn't have a lot to add. That was pretty close to what I was going to say. And this is the first time that's really happened, except in specific cases where I've taken very high resolution or zoomed in screenshots with leading questions and gone to them and said, hey, what do you think? Right? So now I've kind of asked it to build the best version that it can. That's all I did. Just build the best version it can based on what it's learned. And then it's gone ahead and done that. And here's the other thing that we're just blowing right past. It's running into all sorts of front-end bugs that it's just fixing as it goes, because this is slowly going to get more and more and more complex as an app, right? But it's crazy because we've now had browser features and screenshot features for a long time. But the problem is models don't always, they just look right past the screenshot. They just look right through the screenshot and say, well, that looks good to me. I've even had Gemini 2.5 make up reasons for why it was fine after I pointed out that the text was unreadable and breaking all over the place. So we're still really far out from pleasing people like me who notice if like the kerning on a font is off. But as far as design goes, I think this is the first model that can actually fix its own work. So I think front end might have actually changed. So meaning we don't have to get it right the first time, which means we can actually go towards more and more and more complex designs. Because until now, you can build dashboards, which was amazing and still is, but really responsive mobile designs with creative elements meant that someone had to go build that custom widget for you, and then a model will insert it, right? Or a model will kind of build it if you really, really know what you're doing, which in this case I don't, not a front-end person. But this is the first time you can actually do this. So I just thought it was really, really exciting to share. I'm just going to speed through here a little bit. I actually slowed it down. So we're now trying to put that particular element together. Actually, I say we, but most of it's just the model. I occasionally will zoom into something, say like, that's hard to see, and then it will revert, and then we'll come back. We had an idea that like we were going to look at calories remaining instead of calories consumed, and see how that works. And how well that would fit. And this is an interesting part where I just give it a color, just one color, and then I just say, oh, base everything around that color. Here, I'm actually pushing it towards a specific thing that I know models have a really hard time doing, which is creative graphs. So here we have effectively weight numbers on top of a moving average that gets calculated differently with daily estimated expenditure, which is an algorithm that sort of changes over time, that has its own y-axis. So we currently now have two different y-axes. We also have varying date ranges, and then we're also trying to format those better. So that's already hard, and now we're also adding in estimated calories as a stacked bar with protein in a different color, and also trying to make sure that it connects to the same y-axis as the daily expenditure, so you can tell on the days where you hit or you don't, right? Most of this is reasonably real data, by the way. And right below it, where you see today's food, you will see the remnants of the old design that models have. We're going to get rid of that in a second. So this graph alone tells me that we are in a new realm when it comes to generating information. But just how often the model is looking at its own work and then fixing something should tell you that like we couldn't have gotten here otherwise. So the next one is even more complicated. We're going to ask the model to make effectively a past and a future, which is a timeline of all the things I've eaten and all the things I could eat, right, on the left and right. Again, response, as far as responsive design goes, hard. Lists next to lists within lists. This is something that maybe Gemini 2.5 and 3 could do with a lot of prompting, but not easily, right? And the model just sort of goes ahead and does it. And the really interesting thing is it runs into almost all of the problems that older models would, but in this case, it's a speed bump because the model will do it, see it, and fix it and move on, right? Very, very, very quickly. And then towards the end of it, we're actually going to go in and make an input box specific to log AI foods. That's another thing, just as a little bonus. This is the first model that is good at calling AI models, that is good at writing code and prompts together to call AI models, because I usually almost always include it as a prompt when I test a new model to see if we've crossed that frontier where a model can finally do it. This is the first model that can. So all I said was, hey, I'd like to be able to take some I'd like to be able to take some pictures, send it off using the AI SDK to a model, get structured data out as an array of objects, and each object should be a food item with the macros and sort of the portions, and then bring it back. It just did it. Like no additional work from me needed. And that's always been really interesting because models traditionally, at least in my testing, have always been really bad at writing code to call other models. All sorts of artifacts would show up in there. Streaming would be bad. They would forget what multimodality was. They wouldn't know how to process responses. They'd suddenly forget what tokens were. No problems here. So here, the model is just testing its own code, doing searches, like trying to figure out what works. So we'll quickly kind of look at the actual output, the actual app, which I actually, went a little overboard and had it also mock up Garmin data, and I don't want to import it, and then add pictures and emojis based on the activities and the amounts. I just wanted to see it break. So far, it just has not broken. Now here, this also is really well done. I think everything comes in from the bottom. We had a short conversation about Fitts law at the very top. I think that burned in. And you can just take pictures very quickly, add these in. And if I can then just send that off, there we go. We've got wonderful increments. We can log that pretty easily. We've got a time picker over here if we just want to add time. And everything just comes back well. This, somehow, I like it. It just looks really great. Opus 4.5, especially on Cursor, but even without it, even with the right MCP, might be the first model that can actually close that gap.